Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day, and above all else, that you're indeed looking after yourselves and one another. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have a bit of a free-for-all episode on the Music Den. How much is enough? Now, the idea or the impetus for this episode was brought on by the one and only Mr. Jim Bricker.
No, it
Uh,
wasn't.
yes,
It
it
was brought on by
was.
an argument initiated by Ken.
There you go. There's the free for all. We are going to be talking about, in particular, for this episode, albums that we feel maybe I've gone overboard with in terms of amount of music, style of music. Maybe there's too much variety on one album. Whatever the conversation brings up, we will discuss. This is the free for all angle that we're looking at. And Jim has come up with a list of, I do believe, what, five albums that he believes that have gone too far?
I have five where I think we have too much of a good thing.
Too much of
I
a good
have
thing.
five where I think we're just right. And then there's one that's on the bubble.
On the bubble, yes. And the question that I'm going to put to the panel that we will answer at the end of this long episode or intense episode. Can you have too much of a good thing? We will answer that at the end of this episode. So, uh, Jim, why don't we take a look at your list of albums that you have?
Okay. So I want to start just by answering the question first, which is, can you have too much of a good thing? And I think the answer is yes, you actually can.
How so?
What? Well, hold on, mon ami.
No.
What I want to do is kind of start with albums that I think where you don't have too much of a good thing. So I can kind of define it in positive terms as opposed to negative.
Duly noted. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
You with me, Ken?
Yeah, I'm right here.
All right. Okay. So for me, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John, 1973. Not too much of a good thing. And I think the reason I mean, there are one or two songs off on there that are just kind of questionable, Jamaica jerk off, if you will. But I think overall, the album is really, really solid. It's not perfect, but it's really solid. And one of the things that, we kind of talk about is um, can too much variety kind of doom an album? And this is an album where every song kind of has a different style to it, yet the the nucleus of the instrumentation remains the same throughout. Elton, Dee, Davy, Nigel, maybe David Henschel coming in on synth, Ray Cooper on percussion, maybe on this album. I don't recall. Um, I don't think so now that it comes out of my mouth. But anyway, there's enough cohesion within the variety to not make it seem like it's just in danger of just spiraling out of control. And it doesn't feel like an everything in the kitchen sink type of album because there's this cohesive lineup through it. And it kind of carries you from song to song, even though, you know, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting is much different than, Roy Rogers, which is much different than Social Disease and Harmony. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of variety in there, but
The
yet there's
song,
still there's still consistency within it.
yeah, there's
So
also the song has no title. Um,
Gray Seal.
Gray Seal, Funeral for a
yeah,
Person Love
side two
Lies
has a whole.
Bleeding.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay,
Exactly.
all
So
right.
so that kind of defines the term for me of what does work, where you have variety, but it doesn't spiral out of control. I want to contrast that. So I guess I'll do a positive and a negative
Oh,
for
we're
each one.
contrasting now, are we? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, we're contrasting.
No, go
Um,
ahead.
a recent video that we did, we talked about the Pat Metheny album Secret Story, where I posited that it's too much of a good thing. because there's kind of, I called it, there's no through line through the album that can bear the weight of all of the kitchen sink inconsistency that comes through all the tunes. So for me, Secret Story is an example where you do have too much of a good thing. Now, if this album were like cut in half and you did whatever, Late for Dinner and, Aunt Granny's Pies, two different albums, then maybe you could make something a bit more cohesive of that, because it's not a 76-minute sprawl. It can be more compact, and that would probably make a lot of the variety a lot more palatable to me as a listener. So that's my first example of kind of contrasting variety and what works and what doesn't.
And you have the
Boom.
floor.
Yeah. Okay. Looking back at some other Metheny albums we've talked about in the past, if Secret Story were divided into two albums, would the second of the two be derivative?
I don't know. It depends. I mean, there's a whole ton of variety in Secret Story. So from a stylistic standpoint, I don't think a companion volume or whatever you want to call it would be derivative, because like I've said, all of the songs in and of themselves as individual pieces, you know, are pretty nice. They hold up very well. But again, just as a whole cohesive thing, it's just too much. Yeah, as opposed to say like un momento, sir. As opposed to
Of
the point that
course.
I was making in the other video, thank you, about Secret Story and Letter from Home, where Letter from Home seems derivative because that kind of Latin, Brazilian feel had been done before on Still Life. But
Is it not possible with an album like Secret Story to take it on a track by track basis?
yes, and that's what I was trying to distinguish, is that individual tracks, they're fine. But if I want to sit down and have a whole cohesive listen to it, it just kind of seems, too much, because it doesn't kind of hang together.
Okay.
Similarly, um, to me, and I'll bounce back and forth here, so you're not gonna get consistency out of me, lads. Um,
I
you know, to
didn't think we would. Go ahead.
so to me, like physical graffiti is kind of the same. It's too much of a good thing because it's long. I mean, it's like a good 82 minutes, maybe 85 over the double album. And yeah, again, it's each individual song on their own is great. It's just that there's so much and there's so many stylistic changes throughout that it's really hard for me to kind of listen to physical graffiti in one sitting,
Hmm.
uh, because it kind of gets all over the place. Contrast that with, say, well, it's kind of hard to make a contrast to physical graffiti, a direct contrast, because it is sort of an odds and sods album. It's leftovers from that go all the way back to 1970 in some cases, and new tracks as well. So you are going to get some kind of a mishmash. So
That
the
that
comparison that I was,
Sorry, that just brings up my next question. Is the
Mhm.
fact that maybe the knowledge that Physical Graffiti, and don't get me wrong, Physical Graffiti was my number one album when I did a Led Zeppelin album ranking. Is the fact that, let me rephrase that. The knowledge that Physical Graffiti is made up of previously unreleased songs. Does that kind of maybe sort of taint your view on it being not
no,
cohesive? Okay. Okay.
no. If they had taken physical graffiti and done a here's the songs that we recorded this year, and they did some other release with here's the odds and sods that have been left over for the last 5 years, I think that would have been fine, because again, it would have been like one 40-minute album, and I could handle that. If there's stylistic variety within 40 minutes, that can still hold together pretty well. For me, doing that over 80, it it starts to wear on me as a listener.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I was going to contrast that with, say, English Settlement by XTC, which is a double album, not quite 80 minutes, but close to it. I think 76, 77. Uh,
Mhm.
15 songs, all kinds of variety in there, but yet it's all similar to Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. It's, it's one band. It's kind of one set of instrumentation, if you will. And even though a song might be kind of, you know, acoustic, I don't know what you would call yacht dance. You have a song like Yacht Dance, compare that with Melt the Guns, compare that with, you know,
Sentimental
Snowman
Overture.
or something. Yeah, I mean, it works together because, again, there's a cohesion, even though there's a variety in the different song styles that are there. So to me, English Settlement is not too much of a good thing because, again, there's a cohesion.
Okay, so is there? I've noticed that we've been talking about double albums. Is there more of a chance that a double album will be too much of a good thing as opposed to a single album?
It depends on to me, it depends on what it's doing.
Hmm.
Again, if there's kind of a so English Settlement is cohesive to me in terms of its instrumentation, so it works over double albums. It kind of holds my interest, as opposed to, say, Secret Story, which basically is the same length, where it's just kind of all over the place and there's no through line that sort of runs
Yeah.
through it. There are single albums to me where it gets too much, and we'll kind of pivot to that next, maybe, I suppose.
I hear what you're
But
saying.
I want to hear what you guys have to think.
As the dutiful host, I will go last. Ken.
I think I've in thinking about this, um, the the whole concept of an album being too much of a good thing
Hmm.
initially doesn't really strike me.
Hmm.
Uh, After a lot of thinking, I think, and I think it's the exception rather than the rule. Um, the only thing that's occurred to me recently that might fit that is uh, Chicago at Carnegie Hall. Originally 4 albums, I believe.
Four
Oh,
volumes.
like 1971 release,
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever that
and
was. Yeah.
which was is it's roughly the first 3 albums played live, um, and because I guess if I were to listen to um, early Chicago, I probably wouldn't just listen to one right after the other. Whether it be Transit Authority or Chicago or I'd probably listen to one and maybe go listen to something else and break things up. I
Hmm.
wouldn't sit down at one time and go through their catalog for the first 5 albums.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, and there I maybe over time and a lot of thinking, I might be able to come up with something else. But generally, that's too much of a good thing on an album. Just if I like it, I like it. You know,
Hmm.
whether it be Secret Story or um, uh, Fragile or Close to the Edge or any of the XTC albums,
Hmm.
um, and and double albums too. One of my favorite albums of
Excuse me.
all time, Quadrophenia. I put that on, and
Hmm.
it feels like I blink my eyes and I'm at the end of it. And it's like, no, I don't want it to end.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so even some of the triple albums, Yes songs. I tell you what, that's a single listen for me. That's not too much of a good thing. So yeah, and that's why I'm so curious about your take on this concept. You
Hmm.
know, and while we're doing this video, is there such a thing as too much of a good thing? I'm trying to find another entry point to that concept, um, because obviously we all have our own, natural viewpoint, and it takes someone
Hmm.
else to show another way to look at it to consider that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I get what you're saying because I too, like Ken, am trying to grasp the concept of your meaning of, too much of what is too much of a good thing. Because to me, a good album is a good album. Um, whether it
Hmm.
be a double album or a single album. I'll give you, like, for me, I can give you prime examples of albums, whether they be single or double, that to me work from start to finish. Queen 2, my favorite Queen album. Uh, for me, it works from Procession to Seven Seas of Rye. I mean, there's not one track I would skip on there. That's, again, to me, personally to me.
Hmm.
For a double album, The Wall.
Hmm.
Okay. There have been discussions about, that it should have been a single album. I do not know how in the hell you could trim that down to be a single album and to have it make sense because it is a story. It's a concept.
Sure.
Sure.
Um, I can give you an example of an album that doesn't that over time to me has fallen short,
Hmm.
and that is Prince Emancipation. The
That was a
triple
triple CD, right?
the triple CD that he released for EMI in '96 was three CDs, 12 tracks per CD. Um, the album was 120 minutes or something like that, maybe longer. Um, over time, it didn't work for me. The songs, it started out okay, and there's a lot of variety on that album.
Hmm.
There's there's R&B, there's house music, there's almost, I guess you'd say, like jazz, ragtime jazz kind of music. A lot of variety. Over time, it has fallen short for me.
So has it fallen short because you've found some of the songs wanting, or it's just like this is just too long?
It could no, it comes down to me, it ultimately came down to with and I'm a Prince fanatic. Do not get me wrong.
Hmm.
Everyone watching, do not get me wrong. I love me some Prince. But it just got to the point where, for me, the songs were lacking in structure, just the song quality. The songs weren't as good as as I initially thought they were.
Okay.
Too much of a good thing. I personally don't think you can have too much of a good thing because a good album is a good album.
So are you now saying Emancipation is not a good album?
I no, I'm
I'm
saying no, no,
fuzzy.
no, no, no. I'm saying what I'm saying is this, sir, is that
Hmm.
yes, Emancipation over time has proven to be for me not as strong of an album as I initially thought it was.
Okay.
It has fallen short. There are albums, like I said, Queen 2, um, The Wall, Welcome to My Nightmare. That
Hmm.
it's and it just depends. It goes from for me, it's an album by album basis. Start again.
Sure.
It's an album by album basis. There's a lot of
Hmm.
variety on Welcome to My Nightmare,
Hmm.
Alice Cooper's solo debut. That
Hmm.
it works for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sure.
but if you, I mean, with the Prince album, it was the song quality that was not up to snuff as the previous albums
So
had been.
so would it have been a release that doesn't lose its luster if they had trimmed a third of the songs?
Yeah.
Just picking a number at random.
It, had they gone from say side one and the first disc and went right to disc three and maybe cut out disc two, they would have had a stronger album.
Okay.
But yeah, but again, this idea of I'm trying to grasp the concept of
Hmm.
of you saying of having too much of a good thing. I'm still having trouble getting my mind
Well,
around that concept.
well, to me, and maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying, you've kind of given an example of too much of a good thing. That there's great stuff in Emancipation, but it's maybe a third bloated, and it would be a better thing if it were scaled back. I mean, that's what I hear you saying. And
But is that too much of a good thing? Because if it was a good thing, then nothing would need to be edited off of it.
Yeah, he just said he feels some songs are lacking, so therefore it's not a solid good thing.
Yeah,
And
it's
by the
not.
way,
It's
I like to point out, I think it's absolutely normal for songs that we liked earlier in our lives
of course.
that just have not stood the test of time.
I'll give you a,
absolutely.
I'll give you another
I've got
example.
plenty of
Tears for
those.
Fears. Tears for Fears. Raúl and the Kings of Spain. I
Mhm.
Choose You. That one track. The album is going great, and there's that one fart in the middle, right at that one. It's like
Hmm.
you hit a road bump or a speed bump, and you pass gas because you just can't hold it in. 'Cause you just get jolted. It's that one jolt of I Choose You, which for those of you out there who don't know, it's pretty much a piano driven track, and it there's a good momentum on that album. And then when you get to I Choose You, it just falls off the cliff. And then it picks up again. But it's that one track. So no, that's another example of an album that isn't too much of a good thing because there's that one song.
It's not a perfect
Right.
album.
And that's similar to what it sounds like. That's similar to the point I was making about Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. You can have a track, you can have a bad track like Jamaica Jerk Off,
Mhm.
but as an entire thing, it's not too much of a good thing. I guess the what I get stuck on is that it sounds like just by its Ken, maybe you can talk some sense into me. But what I hear Armando
Good
saying
luck. Go
is
on.
that what I hear Armando saying is that like a third of Emancipation, if you took it out, would make for a better thing. And
Yeah.
that's a lot different, but that's a lot different than say one song is a turkey. You're saying like a third of it, a third of the whole set is a turkey.
Okay, but what okay, you're right. When when you like for me when I hear the term too much of a good thing, it's like that's a bit of an oxymoron because if something is that good, then why is it too much? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Well, okay, so I'll make a point with that, and then maybe Ken can
yeah,
talk some sense into me.
okay, hold on a sec. But Ken, do you understand Ken,
Yeah,
not Ken,
yeah,
do you
yeah,
understand
yeah,
what I'm saying? Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay,
I'm
all
following
right,
you on both. Yeah.
All right.
okay. So, let's stay with our friend Roland Orzabal with Tears for Fears.
You
The
got it.
Seeds of Love album, I think, is too much of a good thing. The reason being is that side one, and let the hate flow through you. Side A is perfection.
I
There's
would say so.
song, I mean, the songs run from like nearly 5 minutes to like eight and a half, if memory serves right.
Yeah, Bad Man
There's
song is 8 minutes and 30 some odd seconds, track two. I remember it well. Yes, go on.
okay. So the songs are long. They are incredibly dense. They are immaculately performed and arranged. And by the time you start with, the drum beat and the descending bass line of Woman in Chains to the end of the vocal fade out of Advice to the Young at Heart. It's just like just such a journey. And
Yeah.
it's just so overwhelming that it's
Okay.
like I have to put it aside. I feel like it's just a line from a movie. It's like I can't handle this. I
It is.
can't handle more of this. And so that's why, to me, I have to have a good length of time before I approach side two of that, because for years when I listened to side two right after side one, I'm like, I don't get it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I realize I'm just like tired.
Okay, and then
What?
okay, and then this
Wait a minute.
begs the question, and then Ken will jump in. Who says you need to listen to an album all the way through both sides?
The artist.
Is there some written law that I don't know about that the music industry came out with in the Bible of music that says that you have to listen to an album all the way through? You can't listen to
No,
one
but
side
but
and
but but
then
I
you.
think just it's inherent in its delivery as a unit
I understand.
that it's to be consumed as a unit, if I may. So
Okay.
Okay.
that
So, ta while we're still on Seeds of Love, would you feel the same if you listen to side two first and then side one? Would you still feel the same at the end?
like I was exhausted or overwhelmed?
Yes.
Probably.
Okay.
Well, hang on. So you're saying if I just listened to side B first,
Yeah.
would I be exhausted at the end of side B? Is
No,
that
if
what
you
you're?
listen to side, because we're talking about if you listen to side A and then B, it's too much. But if
I
you listen to side B, then A, would the end result be the same?
Probably because,
Okay.
well, again, the point is after I listen to side A, I'm done because it's so good.
Okay.
It's just so good. It's like where can you go from there?
And can you say the same thing about side B?
No, because I don't
Okay.
think side B is as good as side one, but side B is really, really, really good. It's
Yep.
just that by the time I'm finished with side A, I got nothing.
What about okay.
So maybe it's not so much it's too much of a good thing, but just um the song order. It's so heavily weighted up front.
Well, maybe, but I don't know how I would reorder that album and have it work because I've tried
Okay.
and it just doesn't flow. I mean, I think the flow
Sure.
that they've got is perfect, and that's part of what makes side A such a freaking masterpiece
A
is
banger,
the
yeah,
sequencing.
a banger, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a
Because
banger.
I mean, let me put it this way. I love side A. I have difficulty not dealing, listening to side two because although it's good, the quality isn't as as good as side A is.
Sure. It just, it's like, it's not quite like, you know, comparing a third grader's clay sculpture to Michelangelo's David.
Yeah.
But you kind of get the idea. It's like side A is this whole other thing, and side B just pales
I
in the shadow of it
I'm for me, I'm just saying my 2 cents
to me.
counts. I'm just saying that the idea of having too much of a good thing, it's like it doesn't hold for me because if something is good, then why not have more of it? Why not? Do you know what I mean? Like, why? Where does the too much part come in? I don't get that. Like,
Well,
So
why not eat
so
anything but ice cream?
brain freeze. So Jim, are
weight
you saying
gain,
in a
weight
way,
gain.
so in a way, is it a form of sensory overload?
I
Yeah.
don't know. Like physical graffiti is not sensory overload. It's just kind of all over the place. Secret Story, much the same way. Seeds of Love is a different thing where to me there's just a density to it that makes that kind of a sensory overload. Where
Well,
Secret
okay,
Story and Physical Graffiti are just kind of, the kitchen sink in a tornado.
okay. Let's use another album as an example. A Night at the Opera. Now,
You're going to have to speak to that because I
now
don't know it
there.
well enough.
Well, from what you've heard of it, like you've listened to it for
Yeah.
another episode, do you
Hmm.
find that there's too much musical diversity on that album as opposed to Seeds of Love or
I'm taking a look at the so no, there's just not enough songs on the album that grab me.
okay.
I mean, like I've gone on record and I maintain You're My Best Friend is like a 10 out of 10 song. Um, Bohemian Rhapsody, classic for a reason. Prophet Song, that's up there. Um, but there's just not enough on the rest of the album to kind of hook me, but it's not because it's too diverse.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, for all right. I'm just trying to give an example of maybe of an album that maybe musically is a little bit too diverse. I got nothing here, but I mean that was my best
Well,
shot.
I've
You
I
got some
talked
more.
about
Go.
one that
Yeah.
I have one on the bubble where I
Okay.
don't know
Let's
how
talk
I
about
feel
the
about it.
bubble. Let's talk
Okay.
Let's
about
talk
the
about the
album.
bubble. Joni Mitchell, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter.
Okay. I have not
It's
heard that yet, but
okay. Well, it's for those who have, and for those who will. I think they're going to get kind of that same stylistic overload. It's a double album. Again, most of the songs in and of themselves, much like Secret Story, are just great. Um, Talk to Me, which is basically a duet with Joni and Jaco Pastorius, is just one of the greatest things I've ever heard. Paprika Plains, the 17-minute suite that makes up side two, is a phenomenal piece of music. But I don't know if I enjoy listening to the whole of Don Juan's Reckless Daughter in one shot
so why is it on the bubble for you, as you put it?
because I don't know.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Maybe I haven't listened to it enough.
Hmm.
Maybe maybe that's the only thing that's sort of keeping me from making a valid decision is have I listened to it in the context of, you know, is, can I get through it in one sitting? Do I lose patience? Am I overloaded with musical stimuli? Does it just seem like it's padded out with, naff tracks here and there? It's that kind of thing. If there are people who know Donna Juan's Reckless Daughter, you know, throw
Please
a
put in the
comment
comments
and
down
Yeah.
below.
Yeah.
Yes. And just to make a point, I do have the CD. I have two copies of it. I have the initial CD release, and I have the reissue that was included in the remastered reissued box set. I just
oh, and
haven't had time.
the reprise box.
Yes, and I just haven't had time to listen to it, but I do have it. So I just don't want anyone to think that I don't know the album that we're talking about. Um, okay.
Well,
And
you've said, I'm not familiar with it, but you
yes,
you at least know of the album. So
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
yeah,
Ken, you
so
want to add any more? Want to chime in some more? Because
I'm I don't know enough about the album to be able to comment on it. So Jim,
well,
what's another? You said you had five. Give us
okay, yeah,
another one.
of too much of a good thing.
Yeah,
yes,
and then we'll do some more compare
yeah,
contrast.
yeah.
Stephen Wilson's The Raven Who Refused to Sing. And we've talked about this before,
Hmm.
where it's again, each individual track, don't give me that look,
Jim,
Venditti.
you
Don't give me
ignorant
that look.
slut. My God. I
We've
mean,
we've,
like,
we've
come on.
talked about this with Bill. And even Bill, who is, the major Stephen Wilson's fan,
We just made Jim
understands
go
where
up
I'm
an
coming from.
octave. We just made Jim go up an octave in his voice.
Hey, I see a little silhouette of a man. I could get there if I really wanted to. Um, it's just too much prog.
Wow.
You know, it's
Coming from
just
you. Wow.
Ooh.
I'm not that I like prog, but I don't live and die in that circus.
You've got one foot in Prague and the other foot in jazz.
And if I had more feet, I would have it with, you know, power pop
And for
or
No, I hear
bluegrass
you. No, I
or,
and
hear
for
you
you.
know,
those of
I hear you.
again, let's just backtrack. For those of you out there who are not familiar with The Raven That Refused to Sing and Other Stories, it is an album of 6 tracks by Stephen Wilson, produced by Alan Parsons, uh,
engineered.
engineered. Sorry,
Here,
I sit corrected. Well, I can't stand, so I have to sit.
done the same
Now,
thing.
Good sir.
the songs are inspired by the works of Edgar Allan Poe. They're basically all ghost stories in one form or another, talking
Mhm.
about death and murder and grieving,
Ghosts and
ghosts and
yeah.
grieving. So do continue, my dear boy, with your.
It's an excellent album. And I, you know, I think Luminol and Drive Home are two of the best songs I have ever heard. And those are songs 1 and 2 on the album. But very much like Seeds of Love, by the time I'm done with those 2 songs, I've had my fill. It's like going to the best restaurant in town and not wanting to completely gorge yourself till you're going to vomit or have to buy new pants. It's like that's all I can stands. I can't stands no more.
Okay, I have one question. Have you listened to Grace for Drowning? I mean,
Yeah, I love Grace for Drowning
and you don't think that that is, oh, woo!
because,
Okay,
and this is going to sound weird,
go
but
for it.
because of variety, it's not all heavy prog. There's some ballads in there. There's, smaller, simpler arranged tunes. Um, there's some epics in there. There's like little guitar pieces that are like a minute and a half. So it works for me better because it doesn't demand much of the listener for one thing for a whole 65 minutes.
Okay,
Hmm.
have we been listening to the same album? In all honesty, I mean,
Well, I mean, that it kind of speaks to the fact that, you're a very vocal fan of Queen 2 and A Night at the Opera, and I just can't find my way into those albums. But it doesn't mean that you're wrong and I'm right.
no, no,
We
no.
just we just see the albums much like these Steven Wilson albums in different ways.
I know, no, no. Point taken. Point taken. I mean, I just remember that on Grace for Drowning from Stephen Wilson, there is a 20 some odd epic, 20 some odd minute epic on that I'm listening to it and I'm like, when is the hemorrhage gonna or the aneurysm gonna stop? It's like, when is because to me, that one track is sensory overload. And that's
Yeah,
just the
Raider
one,
2 is what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, radar to, and that's just the one track. So
Hmm.
when you say that The Raven That Refused to Sing Another Story is sensory overload, I'm thinking, huh? Like, I mean, like, are you
Well,
like,
again, it's 6 heavy prog songs that all average about 8 minutes. Some go up to like 11, and maybe there's one
wow,
that's like 6. But again, when that Raider 2 epic piece is over, I think what the album ends with is a tender, kind of beautiful elegy to his father, which is called like dust I've cleared from my eyes. So again, there's that variety, but it's not a kitchen sink type of variety. It works and holds to me all the way through.
okay. Ken, do you
Okay.
want to weigh in?
I'm there again, I've listened to it, but I've never soaked in it, so to speak. So I'm still trying to get my feel for Steven Wilson. So
Well, okay, let me. But up. I don't know if this will come through or not because of the glories of Zoom.
yeah, the new one.
The
Okay, stop
overview.
there. Stop there. Bring it down. Bring it down. Okay,
Yeah.
you got it.
So this is a 40-minute, well, tangent. What a surprise. It's only 40 minutes. It's basically 2 tracks. It's
Mhm.
prog, but it's not prog. It's approachable.
That's Radar 2. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's not like Radar 2, my good man.
Why are you
My
so
good man.
defensive? It's just an opinion.
I don't know. I get passionate about these things.
Yeah,
I get more
we all
worked
do.
up than I should.
I do believe I struck a nerve. Go on.
Go on. You know, to me, the overview kind of falls in the Mike Oldfield, ELO, Ryan Eno-ish kind of area. And I think it's a good way to sort of introduce someone to what Steven Wilson does without being like overwhelmed with ghosts or frog or too many notes.
Okay. All right.
Ken, you're just blinking. I don't know if that means
No, no,
you
I'm
need you
listening.
need
I'm listening.
help
Yeah.
or
Okay. Is there other albums on your list that are you said you had 5 that weren't um
it turns out I had 4 that were too much of a good thing
Okay.
and 1 on the bubble and 5 that I don't think are too much of a good thing.
Okay. Let's go there.
okay. Yeah.
Okay. So I've mentioned 2 of them already.
Mhm.
Goodbye
Mhm.
Yellow Brick Road and English Settlement.
Okay.
You've mentioned a third, which is Quadrophenia.
Mhm.
Um, in our previous episode that we did talking about Secret Story, we talked about Travels.
Mhm.
So that's my number 4. And the last one for me, which is not too much of a good thing, is The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
Mhm.
Go on.
And that is there because again, there's a through line of a story, even though the story can be incomprehensible at times, but it does kind of hold the entire thing together. There are, I would dare say most people would say that of the 4 LP sides that it originally shipped on, that sides 1 and 2 are superior to 3 and 4. But there are moments of both 3 and 4 that are just absolutely glorious, like the Lamia and Light Dies Down on Broadway and the Slipperman and those kind of things.
Okay.
So to me, that's an album that holds up because there's a through line, and again, because you have a core set of musicians who, even though they're doing a variety of different things, there's still cohesion among them.
Hmm.
And that's really
Interesting.
the entirety of my list.
Interesting. More double albums.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I can't think of many single album examples where there's too much of a good thing.
Okay.
I could list so many single albums that say no, there's not too much of a good thing. But a single album in and of itself is kind of not too much because it's a 45-ish minute slab.
What if I throw an album out there that's another double album? The River.
Please, that's why we're here.
The River. Too
I
much
don't
of a
think
good
that's too
thing?
much. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there are weak spots on it, but
Yeah.
I think it's a great listen.
The Wall. You know my opinion on The Wall. What is your opinion on The Wall?
Great. There's a narrative through line that you can hang a hook. Every song belongs in that order. And like you're saying, what would you remove to make it a single album and still maintain the narrative thread?
Okay.
You know,
Ken, do you want to chime in?
Beatles White Album.
I was just going to say that. Say it again, Ken.
Again,
Beatles White Album.
too much of a good thing or not too much?
No, I'm asking Jim.
Oh,
You're asking me, putting me on the spot. No, I don't think it's too much of a good thing.
Okay.
Are there a lot? Are there songs that are inferior to the others? Oh, sure. But
Yeah.
as a double album, it works for me.
Okay. All right. Um, Allman Brothers at Fillmore East.
Well, this is a. I was gonna
ooh,
let me. We'll talk about
okay.
that, and then I want to make a point about live performance.
Okay.
Oh
For
boy.
me, live performance is where it's at. And if you get the opportunity to catch a great band on a great night and have a recording of it, it's that lightning in a bottle concept. Led Zeppelin bemoaned for years that, oh, they never caught us on a good night until they released How the West Was Won. And it's like, okay, boys, now I know what you're talking about. I think Live at the Fillmore East, that was one of my 31 perfect albums. I think that's,
Okay.
absolutely fantastic. But to kind of get to I want to kind of circle back to the Chicago 4 point.
Okay.
My question is, do you know if that album is a direct representative of the shows that they played at that time?
I do believe so.
It's my understanding that they are.
Okay, so this is kind of an interesting point, and one that I was thinking about that I hadn't kind of had a resolution to.
Okay.
Would it be too much of a good thing to sit through that as a concert? The reason I ask that is that when I think about like the Secret Story album, and maybe if I had had the opportunity to see that live, or like the DVD that's out there, when I've seen that, um, I don't think that's too much of a good thing because it's a performance. It's
Okay,
meant
I'm
to
gonna.
be experienced as a performance.
Okay, can I answer that question from my point of view
Yeah.
of Chicago?
Yeah.
If I had seen the show the 8 times, yeah, it would have been a lot because it's the same show over and over again.
Well, yeah. I think the monster box is just ridiculous. You've got to be like a hardcore Chicago fan to want 8 copies of the same frickin' show.
Yeah, yeah.
And like we've talked about, the Yes Progeny box set, it's just stupid. It's the same show 7 times.
It's
You
for
you
completists. Yeah.
it is for completists.
Or it's like the UFO Strangers in the Night that I have.
Yeah,
That
you made
box
that
set.
comment before too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly, like if Matheny, whom I adore, if he did
No,
a,
really. Go on.
I know it's shocking, if he did like a box set of, the Pat Metheny group run at whatever Radio City Music Hall 3 nights in 1987, and every night was the same night, or every night was the same show, I wouldn't want any part of it. It's just too much. There's no need for it. If it was like Fish over 3 nights at Radio City Music Hall, that's a different story because every Fish show is different. I mean, my God, they played 13 nights in a row at Madison Square Garden and they never repeated a song. Never.
Okay.
That's value for dollar right there.
Hmm.
And there's jazz bands, like there's this Miles set that, we've kind of talking about the 63 to 64 set, where there's a lot of the same tunes, but yet because of the nature of jazz, it doesn't die
The
from the
nature
repetition.
the nature of improv. Yeah, I get it.
Right. Whereas like the Matheny group, even though there is improvisation there, it's highly, highly arranged. So basically, you're going to get the same show every night, as opposed to seeing, the Pat Metheny trio of, Pat and Christian McBride and Antonio Sanchez, which is going to have a different flavor
Yeah, but
every show.
with shows like that, with performances like that, the songs do modulate into different areas and different sections and stuff. So I get
In
what you're
in in
saying.
what case are you? I'm sorry, I lost you. In
Well,
what case are you talking about?
I mean, I would imagine that with the Pat Metheny situation, that yes, the set list would be the same, but there would be a bit of a variation, like a bit of a difference in the performance, like from night to night, or would it?
Maybe they started using sequencers in the 80s, and when you start using sequencers, you get pretty trapped. The
Well,
the
okay,
There's only been like I've seen the Pat Metheny group like a dozen times. The only time where I've seen them go off script was when they were doing a version of How Insensitive, which is the Carlos Jobim tune. And there was just this where it's usually just Pat, Steve Rodby, and Paul Wertico. Lyle Mays coming in at the end. I mean, they did this on the Imaginary Day tour, which
Right.
I think you
Right.
saw. And they were just and then the towards the end of the solo section, it's just Pat and Rodby and Wertico just slamming going at it, and there's like Lyle comping and whatnot. And then one of the shows, I just saw Pat give a look to Wertico, and they just went for a whole nother couple of bars because they were completely locked in.
Mhm.
And for a tune like How Insensitive, that worked because there's no sequencers involved.
Right.
They don't have to end at exactly the same time. It's a loose enough arrangement where they can kind of take it any which way. But I'm telling you, man, after seeing Metheny Group a dozen times, that's rare.
okay. Okay, I understand that. And again, at the risk of being repetitive, I'm just trying to get my mind around the concept of what is too much of a good thing. I'm sorry. It's like
Yeah,
because
no,
it's
that's a I'm failing to persuade, which either tells me that I'm not being persuasive because my words aren't good or my point isn't good.
no, it's just
Well, I
I'm
don't.
trying to. I mean, again, I'm just trying to understand the your idea of being too much of a good thing. Because if something is that good, how can it be too much? I don't like. Do you?
Well, okay, so let's go back to the UFO Strangers in a Night box.
Yeah,
Is that too much of a good thing? Strangers in the Night as like a one double album from 1981 or whatever. That's
79.
held in very high regard. But but now you've got a six CD box of basically the same thing.
Okay, okay. Now that's where you're going. Okay, I got it now. That bell just went off in my head. Son of a bitch. Okay, good. Now,
Yeah, I mean that's an example of too much of a good thing to me. Like the Yes
yeah,
Progeny box and
yeah. This box set of Strangers in the Night, it 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 is for the hardcore fans.
Yeah.
I know of one individual that will remain nameless that loves this album and loves this set and would not change one damn thing on the set. But the way you were saying and the way it was coming across to me, to my feeble mind, was that, it just wasn't translating like having too much of a good thing. Um, I would chalk that down to repetitiveness. I mean, and that would be for anything. If I got a box, I mean, as much as I love Queen, if I got a box set of their, for example, of their jazz tour from 78, 79, and every night was the same bloody thing, I'd
Mhm.
get bored of it.
Well, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were saying that like the box set that's out there for Queen One that was recently released. I think I remember recall you saying, why would I want all that? That there's just material in there that seems like it's just a cash grab or something. And
Yeah,
to
no,
me, that would kind of be in that category as well.
I did say that because to me, most of the material I already have. Like
Okay, so that's
I have live material of them at the Rainbow. Why would I want an instrumental version of the album?
because you're a completist, or someone out there is a completist.
But I
That's
mean,
the point I'm trying to make.
yeah, but okay, yeah, for the complete sector. But there does come a point where you have to say enough is enough. Like if there was
Right.
something, I mean, and I'll stress this. I love Queen. Anyone out there who knows me knows I love Queen. Do not get me wrong. But am I going to pay like over almost $300 for a soundboard recording of a track called Hangman, which was never recorded in the studio and never released on an album? No, I'll stick with what I have that I got back in 2001 as a
Mhm.
bootleg. I don't, it's not worth it to me. But when you were saying, is it too much of a good thing? I was coming up with a different, like, it didn't click with me until what you said about, but when you refer to being too much of a good thing, and this is my take on this situation, it's all about the content of whatever album you're talking about. And with Secret Story, there is enough diversity, inventiveness, and eclecticism on that album that for me,
Mhm.
it works.
Yep.
You know, yes, Ken?
Okay, let me try to catch up with y'all a little bit. First of all,
Sure, I'll take a sip.
um,
You go ahead.
Professor Professor Bricker,
Yes.
there is no convincing. Nobody's wrong. Okay, um,
Well,
music.
no, but I want to be right.
Good luck with this
You can be
panel.
right. You can be. You can.
I'm
You
with
okay,
you.
you can
I'm
be
with
right. Second of all, second of all,
Thank you, Ken.
box sets box sets kind of really don't count. Um, because
Please say
box
more.
sets are usually targeted towards hardcore fans. For instance, Armando, this takes me back to the very first video I did with you. There's many people that love
Ooh.
Who's Next, but only us hardcore fans like me would spend that much money on a 10-pound box set and be happy with all of it. Do I listen to all 10 discs in a row? No. Sometimes I'm in the mood for one of the live shows or the alternate takes or whatever. So yeah, whether so I don't think those box sets really count.
Okay, let's
Um,
fill out the box sets.
because we know, people out there that have watched more than 2 episodes know that the three of us love our box sets. So
Mhm.
that's our fandom. But the the oh boy, too many thoughts at
Yes.
one time, isn't it?
Um,
But for instance, like The River, we're talking about
Mhm.
another double album there.
yeah.
Um, for me, it's not too much of a good thing because for me personally, it's not a perfect album. So, like you said, there's some songs that are a bit lacking.
Mhm.
I've never played with the concept of what it would be as a single album. I've just never gone there.
And
I
Mhm.
by the way, it was originally a single album called The Ties That Bind.
right, right,
Yeah, and there's a couple other songs that were omitted from the river that were
yeah.
supposed to be on ties, but yeah.
And even though it's not a perfect album, I still have the box set. So there.
So do I.
Um, but the Jim, you had mentioned in that previous video that we're referring to with Secret Story, you had
Mhm.
mentioned the element of density.
Yeah, kind of like what I was referring to with the Seeds of Love.
Yeah. Um, I'm really curious. I know that you're familiar with Steely Dan's Asia, I believe.
One might say so.
One
Yes.
might say so, yeah.
He's heard it once or
Um,
twice. Go ahead.
is uh, where does that fall on your density meter?
Good question.
It's not. It's not dense. There's a lot of space in the recording, because there's not an overwhelming amount of instruments. That's the word I'm looking for. The arrangements, even though you got a song like Asia that's very, very highly arranged, it's not overly complex, and there's not layers and layers and layers and layers of things going on. So I don't I'm not exhausted after I listen to Asia. I'm like, oh yeah, I could go on this ride again.
Hmm. Okay.
All right. So, from what I'm gathering, too much of a good thing for you is the overall feeling you get after you listen to an album. Like if you're sonically, emotionally exhausted from after listening to it, that's too much of a good thing. Is that what I'm understanding for you?
That's one of the elements. I mean, I think there's like three. There's either three or four categories, for me. One is just like overall density, like Seeds of Love is an example of that. It's just too dense. The Raven refused, who refused to sing. It's excellent, but it's so stylistically intense, and it's copy paste in that intensity throughout the whole album, that to me that's a different kind of density. um Physical Graffiti, again, is kind of like a stylistic mishmash to me, and a stylistic mishmash to me would work well over a single LP, but over a double it just kind of like grates on my patience. And then lastly, for something like Secret Story, which is every kitchen sink thrown into the whirlwind, again, there's no through line that kind of holds that thing together. So to me, it's just kind of like a collection of stuff.
You see, because it's funny how you say that. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I do find it interesting that you say that Secret Story is has everything but the kitchen sink. I find Secret Story to be, dare I say it, refreshing in that sonically, in that to me it's textured, it's layered, but there's also some sparseness to it in its arrangement in some of the songs.
Okay, I think there's a few songs that are sparse in there to me, but even songs that are kind of like the simpler ballads, like Always and Forever,
Yeah.
because they have the orchestral swells in there, there's a lot going on. So it kind of loses its simplicity there for me.
Oh, okay.
I think there's like, as a flower blossoms, the duet with Akiko
Akiko.
Yano.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like three instruments in that and a voice. And again, that's simple enough to work for me. And it's kind of like it's like a 1 minute 30-second respite from everything that's going on.
Yeah. An interlude. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get the refreshingness from Secret Story that you do. I get it from other Pat releases, but just not that one.
Okay. All right. Duly noted.
And part of that might be, guys, that Jim and I hear Secret Story within the context of when it was released.
All right.
Yeah, it's hard to separate that.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you being a babe in the woods. Okay, I get it.
and honestly, before we were researching for that video where we talked about Secret Story, it'd been a long time since I listened to the album. Um, and I remember my initial memories being very similar to what you were expressing, Armando. It's just got, and Jim, you're saying of everything in the kitchen sink. I remember it being that way, but listening to it about 3 or 4 times um, before recording that video, I found that my perception now is much more. Um, it doesn't feel like everything but the kitchen sink. It does have more of a cohesiveness to me, and
Yeah.
its own identity compared to what came before it.
Yeah, you were saying
Sure,
that.
Hmm.
there are similar feels to some Matheny group songs. I mean albums that came before it. Um, but it's its own thing. And
It's his own entity.
you know,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
and afterwards, the only thing I would really compare it to, other than those few tracks that remind me of the previous Matheny group, is um, the grandness of it, the how cinematic it is. There are many times it
Hmm.
reminds me of what he did with his film soundtracks, just in longer form. But still, it that um, yeah, that cinemascope just really strikes me about this. Um, is there too much orchestra? I'd say not, but I think some of the songs would have been very interesting without it. I think a lot of the songs, if they'd have been done as Matheny group, then the orchestra
Hmm.
parts would have been just replaced by keyboards, you know,
Hmm.
for the same effect. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so
Yeah.
time and just listening to it has changed my perception of the album. And it's no, my perception isn't worse. It's just it's just different.
Yep.
Um,
Hmm.
and which I find very interesting. Just like what we were talking earlier, there's some albums we just absolutely loved when we were younger that just hasn't aged well, you know,
Exactly.
and or that's because we're in a different place now.
Sure.
Uh,
Yep.
our ears have had more experience in our brains.
Hmm.
Um, it is interesting when you talk about Jim, the demands for of your brain, you know, in
Hmm.
hearing some things. I remember in college um, playing on my Walkman at the time, um, XTC, and I was listening to Slow Train Running on Soul Coal. And you know, I love that song. I still do. I loved it then. And there was one of my classmates could kind of hear the bleeding from the headphones. What are you listening to? I said XTC. Of course, he didn't know who it was. So I let him have the headphones. And it wasn't probably a minute into the beginning of the song that he starts making a face. He says, "Oh, it's too busy." And I'm like, "What the heck are you talking about? Too busy." It's, you know,
Hmm.
but that's just the way it struck him. It was an overload, you know, of
Yeah.
sound. Whereas I'm listening to, and maybe that's because of spending 50 years as a musician, and particularly as a conductor, that I can usually isolate different elements. You know, I can listen to a rock if I'm working with a string quartet. We may be playing through something and I'm focusing on the viola and what they're doing and
Hmm.
analyzing that.
Hmm.
And a lot of times it's the similar thing, you know, with rock. I do the same thing. I'm listening. I love watching YouTube videos of people, you know, bass guitar covers, you know, playing along with whatever.
Hmm.
You know.
Um, yeah, oh yeah. And so, you know, just to see it, because I'm very curious of what's going on, that I might have difficult, you know, picking out on listening to the actual full recording because
Hmm.
of the way it's mixed or what this, that, and the other. That's one reason I like surround mixes of albums I love, because it's
Hmm.
easier to focus on how the individual parts and how they work together rather than just hearing the whole thing at once.
Yeah.
Um, but there again, sometimes an album, whether you love it or whether you hate it, it's okay not to be able to put into words what it is that you don't like.
Hmm.
Music just strikes us. Sometimes it just catches you. You know, when we were talking about um, um, the videos we did when we were talking about singles, radio singles, stuff like that.
Hmm.
There's some of that just pure top 40 pop that I'm looking at. I'm going like, wow, I'm kind of amazed. I really do like that song because I normally don't like top 40 pop.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But then for some reason, a lot of those songs really, strike it with me. I
Jim,
don't know
So
why. It just
Jim, you
does.
put your hand up briefly.
I did put my hand up because I had a question for Ken when he was completed making his point.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. So,
Yeah, that was it.
um, so Ken, I know that you're a fan of the Steve Reich composition called Clapping,
Yes.
which is, Armando, if you don't know about it, it's basically a, a composition of two people literally clapping out the rhythm to something.
Okay.
So think of like the beginning of First Circle by Pat Metheny Group, but have that. How long does clapping go for? Like 4 minutes, 6 minutes?
Yeah, I think like 4.5, maybe 5.
Oh, sweet
Okay.
Jesus. Go on.
So would it be too much of a good thing if there was a clapping album where each piece was it's a distinct composition. There's distinct rhythm motifs going on, but it's all just two people clapping.
That would be annoying.
Would
Go
would,
on.
would that be too much of a good thing?
Um, well, and he's done some similar things to like that with other instruments.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's possible that it wouldn't be.
Oh, okay, interesting.
As long as the pattern, the fundamental pattern, is different enough.
Hmm.
For clapping music, for instance, it's in a standard 4/4. But if another one was in 3, another one was in 7 or whatever, um, uh, and there's different ways to clap too. As far as whether you're hitting like this or like this.
Hmm.
There's actually music written for entire choirs that is only clapping.
Oh
And
dear.
Oh, Lord.
yeah, and Armando,
And you thought the banjo was bad, Armando.
yeah, and what
I've
makes
not
the
changed my
difference,
mind about the banjo, but go
and
on.
what makes the difference is dynamics, level of dynamics, loud and soft, and also the different timbre of what
Okay.
kind of how you're clapping um, gives it almost like a different feel of different voicings.
Hmm.
So I think it's possible, but
Okay.
it would have to be done very creatively, I think, and
Sure.
intentionally not repetitive as far as because we're talking pure rhythms that
Okay.
Yeah.
they're changing up the rhythms. It's like, okay, is um let's look at the album Take Five.
Let's.
Um, all the songs are mixed meter.
Right.
Is it too much of a good thing? Oh heck no.
No.
That's one of my favorite jazz albums. And
I know you prefer that more than Kind of Blue, you heathen.
well,
I
and
love you
Okay.
anyway.
that
Take 5.
that has more to do
Well,
with
Time
instrumentation.
Out is actually the name of the album. Time Out by
Yeah,
Dave Brubeck Quartet.
Okay.
yeah.
We
But
should we should cover that one day, Armando,
yeah,
the three of
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Okay.
But that has more to do with the artistic style and also instrumentation. Because here again,
Sure.
I'll say it again, my favorite jazz instrument and focal instrument is piano. So that's why I like Monk a lot, is because of that. Bill Evans and all these guys, Lyle
Okay.
May. I, I,
All these
I like
cats.
piano over sax and trumpet and zither and stuff like that. So
Okay.
particularly
Say
saxophone.
zither,
Well,
Zither,
zither.
zither,
oh
zither.
God. Okay. Well, I think we've come to the point where there really is no answer, is there? To can you have too much of a good thing?
Well, Jim says yes. Um, I think it's possible, but for me, it's very rare. Like I said, I've thought of only one. I'm sure over time I could think of others. Um, uh, One thing that comes to mind, just I just thought of, is the Nuggets box sets.
Mm.
That's
Well,
yeah,
didn't you make the point earlier that box sets are kind of almost don't count because they're like
Yes, he did.
you're curating a specific genre with
Yes, he
nuggets.
did.
So, you know,
Yes, he did. Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, yes, we caught you. Yes, if I'm understanding correctly, Jim says you can have too much of a good thing. Ken says he's not sure if you can have too much of a good thing. My opinion, hell no. I'm sorry, you cannot have too much of a good thing.
well, hold the phone, Mr. Venditti. But before we just leave that as the final statement, I thought that you had come to see that something like the Strangers in the Night box set or the Progeny box set is too much of a good thing.
I am not referring to, okay, I'm following Ken's lead, although he blew that concept out of the water about the box sets.
I see.
I am not referring to box sets. My take on this situation is, and I've always said this, just like a good song is a good song, a good album is a good album. Whether it
Mhm.
be Pat Metheny, jazz fusion, world music, whatever the genre is, if you enjoy listening to something, uh,
Enjoy it.
I really then enjoy it. I really don't believe it's too much of a good thing. What I think the I, what I think where the confusion comes in is with these box sets, there's a difference between a good thing and repetitiveness. And a good amount of these sets, like the Queen set, like the UFO, Strangers in the Night, they're guilty of repetitiveness.
right.
And that's a hell of a different thing than having too much of a good thing.
Well, okay. See, to me, repetitive is too much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the conclusion of this extended episode on the Music Den of How Much is Enough. Now, ladies and gentlemen out there watching, and if you've gone to the end of this episode, we love you. Okay, please put down the comments below your opinion down there. Can you have too much? Is there such a thing of as too much of a good thing, or does the concept or the idea of how much is enough ring true for you? So please put down in the comments your opinion. I want to thank Jim and Ken for coming along with me on
Hey, we've graduated from frickin' frack. That's good.
otherwise known as Fick and Frack, on this extended journey
Jekyll and Jekyll.
into
Yeah.
music discussion. And we'd like to get a dialogue going on this. Everyone has their opinion. Once the light went off, for me, I understood what Jim was talking about too much of a good thing. Yes, it did go off. Again, there are no right or wrong answers, just opinions. So please put your comments down below. And please click like and subscribe and do hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content we've got coming up. We've got more shows that we're working on, more ideas that we're going to put together for you, and we're going to get them to you as quickly as we possibly can. Please look after yourselves and one another, and we'll see you soon with more videos. Have a good night. Look after yourselves. Bye for now.